Good evening, all Federation starships in the Alpha, Beta, Delta, Gamma quadrants, and also within any temporal rifts. This is the lowdown on lower decks on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Network. And I am your host, the head of the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group, writer, author Josh Pritchett. And I am joined once again by my fellow partner in crime, Mr. Chris Babone.
Welcome. Happy Thanksgiving and happy taquitos night.
Happy Taquitos Night. Let's not lose our heads, Chris.
Absolutely not.
Not at all. So, we had another brand new episode of Star Trek Lower Decks this week, where we had a very, very special guest star. And we're really honored to have had this particular guest. He's just, really big. And I will talk about that right now as we do a quick summary of this week's episode. So if we're ready to go, let's fly. Okay, so the Cerritos is on its way to a space station when it is alerted that there's yet another temporal rift. This has been a recurring thing all season since the first episode of the year. And they go to investigate and close it down. But then they detect that there is some. Well, back up a second. Apparently, a starbase detected that there was an alternate version of the Enterprise D on the other side of this rift. It was also investigating it. And when they go to get ready to close the rift, they discover that there is some lost Starfleet technology that has ended up on a planet near the rift. The planet is one of those that, okay, 1 second in our time is like a month or a week or something in theirs. This is going to be very important. It's very similar to something that happened on an episode of Voyager a long time ago, but it's very important to this episode as well. So, Captain Freeman decides that she's going to put the lieutenants in charge of retrieving this. So, Boiler and Rutherford are left aboard the ship to manage the transporter, while Mariner, Tindy, and T'Lyn are all going to beam down and retrieve this technology. So they find the technology, even though they've also picked up a stalker named Snell. He'll be important later on. And as they are disintegrating the pieces of a Starfleet shuttlecraft from the alternate universe, they find the head of Lieutenant Commander Data from another universe. Also, he's purple. For some reason, everything in the other universe is purple. We don't know quite why yet, but we will find out. But we will get into that later. Okay, so meanwhile, back at the Cerritos, Rutherford and Boiler have managed to spill some very high-end alcoholic beverages onto the transporter controls, and they are desperately trying to clean it up. Otherwise, the transporter will not function. Okay, so realizing that they are going to be on this planet much longer than they expected, Mariner, Tindy, and T'Lyn decide to fix up an old house and move in and start start growing vegetables and living off the land. Meanwhile, though, Tindy has developed a certain jealousy towards T'Lyn because apparently they are both in line for the new science officer job on the Cerritos. However, Mariner has decided that this is a great opportunity to reenact her own version of the TNG episode, The Inner Light, which, if you will recall, had Picard live out the entire lifespan of a single man who has a family, friends, becomes an important part of the community, and also becomes an accomplished flutist. Well, of course, this is Mariner. This is not going to go well. and she keeps ending up in the local jail for weeks on end because she just can't stop annoying people. Meanwhile, Tendi has managed to use the water wheel that Talin has built to generate electricity and revive Lieutenant Commander Data. And of course, obviously, it was voiced by the great Brett Spiner himself. Um, and the alternate universe Data agrees to help Tendi to try to get the science officer's position by coaching her on all things science. Well, of course, back on the Cerritos, Boimler and Rutherford are still trying to clean off the transporter. How those two doofuses haven't been discovered, I don't know. But weeks go by, and Talin has become something of a capitalist by growing and selling very large vegetables that she has grown, and then getting into hair and makeup sales derived from her vegetables. While Mariner has tried to make a flute out of soap and has become best friends with all the other prisoners, including a couple who are apparently convicted murderers, but we won't get into that now. And they are constantly being stalked by Snell, the guy who keeps trying to prove that they're not from around there. So Tendi goes into town to get something and suddenly finds that Talin has become this massive capitalist. Uh, and she gets quite agitated, goes back to her workshop where she shuts down Data because she's been depriving herself of sleep, and has then of course, you deprive yourself of sleep for long enough, you're going to get paranoid, cranky, and do silly things. So, after deactivating Data, she passes out in a chair, and Talin comes in and is then knocked unconscious by Snell, who ties them both up. Tendi gets some much needed sleep, and when she eventually wakes up, she and Talin are tied up, and she confesses that, she was competing with Talin all along about the science officer's job. Talin has said she's going to withdraw her application because she just doesn't think she's very good at communicating with people. And then Tandy says, "No, you're great. I'm sorry." And then they reactivate Data, who helps by chewing the ropes off of them so they are able to escape. Meanwhile, the pendant that Talin is wearing to alert them that Boimler is ready to beam them back has been activated because Boimler and Rutherford finally get most of the transporter panel cleaned off enough for them to beam them out. Well, they go to collect Mariner. Snell brings an angry mob, and they manage to disguise Data because remember, he's purple, has one of Talin's giant grapes. She's evidently made very large grapes, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is ridiculous. It's just a grape." And then they sneak away, even though Snell's still trying to follow them. They get to the transporter site. They beam out. Mariner, Talin, and Tandy are quite annoyed with Boimler and Rutherford for spilling their drinks all over the transporter controls. However, Data, while talking with Captain Freeman, gives her a suggestion in regards to who should be the new science officer. And it turns out that she promotes both Tendi and Talin to be co-science officers. So it all works out, although we discover that Mariner never does learn to play the flute anywhere near as well as Captain Picard did. So with that, that is our episode. Chris, what do we think was good, bad, and Gorn about this one? Chris? Oh, I can't.
Start off.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm here. I will start off by saying I think the episode reinforced something that is conventional wisdom at most workplaces, that while you're around sensitive machinery, you should not be eating or drinking around it,
Yes,
because
you could lose your head.
next thing you know, you'll strand your friends on a planet for what will seem like just a few seconds for you, but it'll seem like months to them,
And you'll lose your head.
and you'll quite likely lose your head.
Yes.
I like the episode because it not only was your classic Star Trek, what are we going to do now that we are faced with a pre-warp society, or pre-industrial society in this case, and we can't reveal ourselves, but we're kind of stuck among you. Um, to the many shout outs to different episodes we had in the script for this episode, such as Carbon Creek got a shout out. All the Tassayar clones, or evil Tassayars, got a shout out. Fully Functional got a shout out. I've seen Lieutenant Worf do this. It was just um, non-stop references to classic Star Trek moments that many fans will be able to remember and relate to.
Yes. And of course, the big part, Brett Spiner guest starred. And it's always welcome when Brett makes an appearance on anything Star Trek. It was great to hear his voice again. Um, and he didn't even have to get into all that makeup. He could just do the voice from a soundstage. So I imagine Brett rather enjoyed that. I kind of like that we're kind of coming to a head with certain things. Like, I think Mariner's getting a lot more commandish, or at least more confident in her abilities to command things. I don't know if that means she's going to become more like the not so nice version of her from episode 1 of this season, but she's definitely acting more like a boss, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I like, though, that it was consistent that, yeah, she kind of screwed up a little bit, doing the whole thing where she gets thrown in the jail, which, she gets thrown in the brig a lot, so probably used to it by now. And of course, obviously, that was where she was going to find her alien family / friends group. That was, it makes sense. This is your element. You're in jail a lot, so yeah. That was really cool. I liked how they worked in the idea of getting stranded. It was okay. They spilled sticky alcoholic beverages all over the transport controls, and we're trying to clean it up with their tongues and everything. It was quite hilarious. And of course, we had reference back to the pad that Boimler stole in episode 1 from his alternate reality self, that he's been using to give himself details that he thinks will help him get promoted. So that was nice to see that's been consistent. And apparently, Rutherford is joining in on the fun, even starting to grow his own beard. So, that was good. What else you got, Chris?
I mean, whether it's intentional or not, I think there was a homage to Woody Allen movie, Take the Money and Run, when Mariner's flute just happens to be made out of soap.
Yep.
It would only have been better if somehow, some way, her flute had gotten if it rained or something and it gotten watered down and started to melt. But in the classic movie by Woody Allen, Take the Money and Run, he's a bank robber who makes a gun out of soap. So that would have been a clear indication whether we had a very slight and clever reference to Woody Allen movie. But like I said, I like the it was a classic Star Trek episode, one definitely made for the fans, and it had also, I like the fact that despite we see them as friends, but there is some competition involved, and there should be. I mean, here you see the two insecurities of two people going for the same senior science officer position, and of course, Tendi kind of loses it in trying to best Talen, and sees the episode also sort of had a Dr. Frankenstein feel to it, because here she is locked away alone in the house with her creation, Data's purple head, that she finds more improved ways to power it up. But definitely has some Frankenstein vibes to it.
Yes. Yes, you could almost say Tendi was losing her head quite a bit.
You could say that, yes.
Folks, we're going to be doing this a lot for the next few minutes.
Um, so, what do you think was the bad of the episode?
Ooh. Uh, mm, well, mm, mm. I don't know. I really didn't think of too much bad in this one. I mean, you know,
I
I mean,
mean, I would say that if you had managed to short circuit the transporter council, an alarm should have gone off on Shaq's board or somewhere. There should have been an alarm saying like, "What did you just do?"
yeah, that would have been a good idea. I don't know why they didn't work that in,
You
but
know,
maybe he was too busy at the whatever that thing was,
Taquitos night.
the keto day. Maybe they were too busy with that.
I mean, maybe everyone was at Taquitos night, and so like the only transporter room that was greenlit to beam them down was that one, and everyone else was powered down because all the other attendants are at Taquito night. But I don't blame him. I'd rather go to Taquito night too.
Yeah, well, who doesn't really? I mean, let's face it, Taquito Night. It sounds awesome. I don't know. It's yeah, that was one thing they messed up on, but I guess they just couldn't work that into the script.
And I guess we, for the sake of storytelling, we have to look the other way. But I get it how Data is functional when and he can talk when he's attached to a power source. But when he's not attached to a power source, he's still talking to them as they're trying to get away. I'm like, it should be an inert head, really. Um, and um, I would have liked to have seen, not that we have all not seen a windmill, but I would have liked to have seen the windmill that's he constructed. And I guess the other part of my question was, did that pre-industrial culture, did they know what a windmill was? Because if you build a giant windmill when no one like is used to seeing what a windmill is, that would sort of suddenly be like, oh, maybe the lurker is right.
No, they probably did. I mean, I think they probably just yeah, it would have been nice though somebody had made a reference about oh, what is that thing that's blowing in the wind? I think it's a giant. We should attack.
Yeah,
Um,
so,
yeah,
something like that. I mean, that'll be the only one. I agree with you though that again, classic Star Trek episode. There wasn't a lot to not like. I mean, I guess. I mean, even a homage to like Wrath of Khan when they shoot Data's head into the singularity. Um,
yeah,
you know, uh, I kind of hoping they know where the. I mean, shooting his head makes sense, but then again, it seems like a crap shot because where's he going to end up? Maybe he ends up with like where all the purple Tasayara clones are. I mean, it's like how do they know Data's going to get to where he's needed to go by just shooting him there? I mean, I don't know. Maybe we communicated with the Enterprise on the other side of the rift, and they said like send him. I don't know.
yeah. Well, I thought they implied that, but yeah, I get it. Yeah,
And,
that
and why would the Purple Enterprise leave their data?
they probably didn't. It might maybe the other enterprises on the other side trying to figure out a way to get data back. You know,
Perhaps.
and you know, obviously, they're still using the Enterprise D over there, so maybe time is moving at a different rate. Uh, or maybe
I
the
lose
head.
my head every time I see the Enterprise D. It must be the nostalgia factor.
Oh yeah, me too. I love that. I love the Enterprise D. That's my fave. Uh, yeah. So as far as Gorn stuff, I mentioned briefly about okay, Mariner seems more confident now as a commander. Is this going to be the thing that makes her turn to like evil, Captain Beckett, um, evil, and like send her mom off to Starbase 80? I kind of don't think so, but it's just something interesting that we may want to watch for. Um, Boimler's beard and mustache are looking worse every week, although Rutherford has started growing his own. So, but the other version of him was like some emotionless cyborg. So, not exactly the same thing. But what do you got for Chris?
So I'm looking at this, and I think the transporter incident and when Tandy says you cannot like copy yourself based on another version of yourself. I mean, you can't like copy someone else's like stick is true, and it's going to come back to bite them in a key moment because regular Rutherford and would never be eating something on top of the Transporter Council. I mean, the gigantic cocktail, the Michelin or whatever they called it. Um, but like he's now bought in with Boimler in like I'm going to imitate my alt self. But I think there's going to come a key moment where they will do something that the alt self did when it was the right time and the right circumstances for them, and this is going to turn into be the not right and very wrong moment and circumstances for them. So um, they're heading towards a massive screw up because of them imitating their odd selves. I think that's what we're headed for.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll happen. Let's see, this was episode 7, so we've got only a couple more episodes to go.
I lose my head every time I think we only have 3 more episodes to go of this.
Yeah, yeah, me too. It just comes right off. It's ridiculous. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think you're right. I think that we're gonna hit like something big, some big crisis, and it clearly is gonna have something to do with these temporal rifts that keep popping up.
I did like that in the episode we went back to the temporal rips because we've been away from them for a couple of episodes. So I think that was good, and it kind of signals that hey, we haven't forgotten about this story wise. Like we're heading towards the end game. Um, but I think yeah, they're going to screw up massively, and also there's just no way after all these episodes he's going to attain Boimler's going to attain full beard and mustache. It's not happening. I think this what we saw is as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, I don't think I think there's something with his face that he just cannot grow a beard. I mean, clearly some of us can grow beards, and I don't think Boiler's one of them.
So, Josh, question for you. So now we've had data. Who are the only 3 TNG officers who have not voiced something on, not mentioned, but voiced their characters on the show?
On this show, well, let's
Yeah,
see. Obviously, there's Worf,
correct.
Picard.
Yes.
Jordy hasn't, has he? No, I don't. No.
I won't, I'm not sure. Maybe he hasn't. So I'm going to have to say 4 then. I was going to say Dr. Crusher, I do not believe has voiced herself.
No. She's voiced herself a couple of times on Prodigy, but not on this. No.
Not on this. So
So yeah, so there's four, at least 4 of them. I mean, yeah, because Riker, Troy, Data, um, Q, uh,
Q.
Wesley hasn't showed up there.
Wait, who?
Wesley.
Who? You have to forgive me, Josh.
Some kid who travels a lot.
You have to forgive me. It's been since like when did now it's been let's say 88 to 2008, 18. It's been 26 years. So some secondary or tertiary characters that might have appeared on the show, I don't remember them anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you remember Tasha, but I don't think they're getting Denise Crosby.
Probably not. So
You know,
those
I've
are the tips
gone,
for this week that I'm hanging my head on. That he's not going to achieve full facial hair, and that because they're imitating their alt selves, they're going to screw up in a huge way.
yeah. I'm gonna go with they're not actually going to find the Enterprise E, so we're still never going to know what happened with the Enterprise E and why it wasn't Worf's fault. I mean, I kept thinking they were going to bring that up on this show. I do know that Michael Dorn did tweet something earlier this year about how he'd been recalled to Starfleet duty, and but he wasn't specific on what was going on. So some people have speculated that he was going to do a voiceover for Worf on the episode on lower decks. So we still have
Maybe
to see.
it's in the Section 31 show that we'll find out what happened.
Well, that is possible. I mean, we did. Worf's grandfather was in Star Trek 6, and he probably might still have been alive at the point where Empress Giorgio shows up in the early 24th century. Because that's all supposed to take place during the Lost era, which is supposed to be everything from the end of Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country to the beginning of Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's this big area that we don't have a lot of mainstream continuity in, except of course the battles of Narendra III and Khitomer, which solidified the alliance between the Federation and the Klingons. So there was that. I mean, we can, we have that to look forward to in just a couple of months. So, I don't really have any other theories at this point. So, Chris,
My only theory is that I'll be very sad when this series finally comes to an end.
you're going to lose your head, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay. Me too. And we only have a couple left to go. So, well, uh, everybody, we we hope that we want to thank you for spending some of your holiday weekend with us as we talk about Lower Decks, and we will be back again next week with another episode of the Lowdown on Lower Decks. If you have any comments or anything, please do put them here on our YouTube page, and we will have our producer get them to us, and we'll see if you know we could we could either reply or answer any questions you might have. So until next week, I remain Josh Pritchett, head of the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group.
I'm Chris Pabon. You may find me on Instagram at Verde Cosplay. If you're a local cosplayer in the Maryland, Virginia, D.C. area, you might be on my feed. Come and see. And uh, also, a moment to recognize the Arrowverse because Superman and Lois ends on Monday. And with the conclusion of that show, will be the formal end of the Arrowverse. And we will begin with the start of the Gun universe.
Oh yeah, that is something. If you're a fan of comic books, which we are, this summer we will have the the next installment of Superman movies, Superman Legacy. Will be opening this July, and yes, for those.
Peacemaker 2 in August.
Hmm?
Peacemaker Season 2 in August.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah, so that's something to look forward to. So the Arrowverse, we've had what almost a little over a decade from the
Yeah.
first episode of Arrow, and then the Flash, Black Lightning, um,
Legends of Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Sorry, Batgirl, which unfortunately didn't last
Um,
very as long as we would have liked. Supergirl and Lois and Superman. It was a great run.
they saved the best for last. Lois and Superman is really good, and I always thought Tyler Hoechlin made a really great Superman. And I thought the focus of what if Superman moved back to Smallville and had two kids was an interesting take on the character. And for me, it worked.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back and binge watch the show as soon as possible. And and I'm also going through and watching the final season of Cobra Kai. I am enjoying that very much. Unfortunately, this is not a Cobra Kai show, so we really can't get into that.
I will say this about Lois and Superman. For me, Micah Cudlitz is the least best of all the Luthors. His interpretation of Lex Luthor does not do it for me. So, of all the great Lex Luthors we've had, his for me would be at the bottom.
Yeah. And our producer is reminding me that Creature Commandos, which is
Commanders, yes.
Yes, that will be in December. It's an animated thing. It's going to appear. Do you know where it's going to be appearing? Is it just going to be like on Amazon streaming or what?
Creature Commandos is probably going to be on Max.
Okay. And then shout out to friend of the show, Blake Neely, who was the composer of the scores on these shows. So
look forward to hearing it.
Yeah. So
I mean,
it's coming on HBO. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the score for the upcoming Suicide. I mean, Creature Commanders, and yes, the scores for the Arrowverse are all quite good. I have them on my iPod right here, so I can testify they were very good scores.
Yeah. So Well, um, go out there if you haven't had a chance. I believe they are on HBO Max. Most of the shows are. If you never got into seeing Arrow or any of the other Arrow universe shows, you don't know what you're missing, folks. This was the DC universe we wanted. And I'm just going to say this, and it's going to make some people mad, but okay, whatever. I thought this was the DC universe that we should have gotten in the Snyder universe. I was very impressed with it. I enjoyed it. And thanks to Greg Berlanti for starring in that TV universe. So,
Greg,
yes,
I just wish you to stop the Flash after season one.
really,
Yes,
I like the Flash.
I liked season one.
Well, season one was awesome, but yeah, I thought they did some good stuff afterwards. So, any rate, so let's wrap this up. And everybody, please have a safe and happy rest of your holiday weekend. Enjoy some more leftovers. I'm just now been realizing that I am really hungry and I've only had a few snacks since breakfast this morning. So I'm going to go chow down on some turkey legs. So peace and long
All right.
life.
Live long and prosper.
Good night, everyone.